All right. Welcome back, everyone. Weekly Bitcoin wrap up with the one and only Coach Nick, lead pray hodl. So, morning, man.
Good morning. How you doing? I'm so excited to be here this morning.
I know I like looking forward to these kind of change of pace for me. So, you are my Bitcoin guy, so this should be fun. So, let's see here. Before we even talk price or charts, I wanna kind of zoom out for a second. Hold on, my other phone. There we go. I want to zoom out for a second because every week we kind of say the same thing. Don't listen to the government, central banks, etc. What they want to do and things like that. But this week, let's kind of dig into first maybe what did governments and central banks actually reveal this week? Their actions with money, not their words.
Yeah, I think the crazy part is they basically said growth is being defended by borrowing, not productivity. So they turning back on the money printer, right? They're heavy into treasury issuance and buying those bonds, and they're getting into the stable coin thing as well. So it seems that governments basically, um, uh, instead of going tight policy, they're just trying to borrow their way into like helping the economy. The problem is they're stuck with their twofold system: inflation going up, or what do we do here? You know, because again, going back to that, is the K-shaped economy. We have the top part of the K doing really well. They don't even notice the change. They're living life. They're going on vacations. They're going to Honduras and Belize and all these things, like myself, you know. And then there's the bottom of the K who's really hurting, where you're seeing changes. You know, I'm a teacher. I'm even seeing some kids wearing the same pair of pants all week. So, you know, before it was like they were getting Uber Eats and everything delivered to school. And you could see that they were just kind of blowing money at that house. And now things are different. The Uber Eats have stopped, and coming in with Starbucks every single day has been slowing down big time. So you can tell there's a difference between that bottom half and the top half of the K-shaped economy. And when it comes to the government, I think they're obviously reading the data, the tea leaves of what they get, but those tea leaves seem to be wrong all the time. You know, they get the data reports and then they revise them later, but they made decisions based on these reports months ago. So that's an issue. And then you have things like even for real estate where rents are going down, but the data lags 6 months behind for a lot of the rental stuff when it comes to their data. So it makes it really challenging. And instead of when you have this type of leverage system, the problem is basically that they're going to just keep borrowing. They're going to just keep inflating the dollar, you know, inflating the dollar, weakening the dollar. And that's why we say to buy Bitcoin, because Bitcoin can't be inflated. Once they finish the 21 million coins, that's it. We're done. At least that's to believe, right? So we'll see once it happens. But once it does, that melting ice cube of fiat is killing people. The other thing is that right now Bitcoin is priced in fiat, so we just see it as how much it's worth: a 90,000, 124,000, and so on. But the challenge really is going to be, what is it going to be worth when it's priced in Bitcoin? How much can you get for a Bitcoin? See, Bitcoin hasn't changed. They talk about, oh, well, it's worth 90,000. No, the Bitcoin's still one Bitcoin. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. It's the dollar value that has changed because everything's priced in fiat. And as time continues to go on, I believe that there's going to be a change in that value. I mean, you see what's happening in gold right now, especially. I mean, gold's at all-time highs, silver's at all-time highs, and things that you never thought about that were sleeping giants for a long time are reaching all-time highs. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Before we move on a little bit, I just want to remind everyone Nick's channel is in the chat. He's also streaming live there. So please go jump over there, hit the like, subscribe, comment something real quick. But maybe we can also add like, so if where was it? If someone ignored every headline and just watched policy and liquidity, what would they have noticed?
Well, they would notice that the government is working towards changing some of the regulations of Bitcoin. They're putting in a Clarity Act, a genius bill that they want to pass through the House and Senate and obviously signed by the president. And once it's done, it eliminates things like wash trading. Right now, you can have wash trading in crypto because there's no regulations like the SEC has been doing for all the other stocks and things of that nature. So those changes are changes that are not like possibly going to happen. They will happen once it's passed, and they need to happen because the price of it is being manipulated by these people that control most of the coins. They sell the coins and they grab the leverage that's either being shorted or longed on the whatever they're perpetrating, they're using. And so that's the big change. So we want to know that Bitcoin doesn't need bailouts. We know that Bitcoin is going to keep the same value, but we also want some regulation. I know a lot of times people would think, well, you want it decentralized and you want unregulated, but the truth is some regulation is good. Even like governments, they don't want socialism and they don't want this and that, but there is a balance. We have a capitalistic America, but we do have some aspects of socialism that are in our country. We still have police and firemen, right? They're all being paid with tax dollars, military spending, tax dollars. We have parks, we have streets. And so there is parts of socialism that people might say is good. There's public education. We have teachers like myself getting paid with tax dollars. Now, do I love capitalism? I absolutely do. I love the idea that you can get rich, and that's why the freedoms of that are amazing. But the same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin. There's going to be some aspects of regulation that are going to be good, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I think so. So when you see these actions in isolation, they're very interesting. But when you view them through the lens of sound money, kind of that's where it really matters, right?
Yeah.
But let's kind of go to, based on what we saw this week, did it strengthen or weaken the long-term case for Bitcoin as sound money, and why?
Well, for this recap, it's a weekly recap of what's been going on this week, right? We know that the Fed lowered interest rates by 25 basis points, which makes liquidity a lot easier, as you could borrow for a less, rate most of the time. Though mortgage rates tend to go up immediately after they lower the Fed rate, right? They're kind of priced in earlier. But we also have banks now, big banks that are like Bank of America and JP Morgan and other banks, Citibank, that are now allowing you to borrow your Bitcoin so you can get loans off your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin to get that money. That's a huge deal for adoption, because that's what's really going on with real estate, right? You maybe get a HELOC or you refinance it. You still have the house, but you're pulling money out of it to get more investments. Well, a lot of people now are going to be able to keep the Bitcoin, but pull money out and do more investments. They might even just buy more Bitcoin with it, depending on the CAGR or whatever else that goes on the compound growth of it. But they might buy real estate. They might dollar cost average into ETFs with that money. But money, to make more money, is exactly what makes the future bright for Bitcoin. These things were not allowed. I mean, banks laughed at Bitcoin. Like JP Morgan was like lying to you, like it's fake money, it sucks, it's terrible. And then in Europe, he was over there buying Bitcoin, but he was telling America, and then he switched it over there. So it's a game of Wall Street and TradFi, and also of crypto and blockchain, all coming together through things like that.
Yeah, to that point, one thing I always find fascinating is that the markets kind of move long before narratives do, right? And you can usually see it in behavior, before you see it in the headlines, right? But where did fear quietly increase this week, and where did conviction quietly grow?
Yeah, fear increased in the labor market, I think. When people are afraid that there's going to be a big crash, well, we know that housing can crash. We've seen it before. So a lot of people are afraid to invest in housing because they see that rents went down, even though they know insurance and maintenance costs continue to rise. They see that people are losing their jobs around me. I know 4 or 5 people right now that are out of work, and they've been out of work for like 7 months. And their unemployment that they got, their little $450 a week, like that's about to end too. So we're in a state of concern. There is fear, there is uncertainty, and there is doubt. And there is doubt, especially from people that are older generations that have experienced like a great financial crash, because they've lost everything and they've had to rebuild it and they don't want to lose it again. So there is a lot more fear in that realm. We're uncertain with what's going on. And we also hear things like President Trump talking about, they asked him, what should the Fed rate be? And he's like, 1%. You know what I mean? Like he's an asset owner. We know that. His kids are heavy into Bitcoin. We know that they obviously own the Trump Towers and golf courses and everything else. But how realistic is it that they lower it to 1% and we restart this whole problem all over again? And if we do, I think it just continues to extend the K-shaped economy. the bottom get left behind, and it's going to lead to a revolt or a revolution of some sort from the people that are struggling. Let them eat cake. History tells us that they will chop your head off. The guy who invented the guillotine, guess what? He got the guillotine. He died. You know what I mean? So it's all very possible with what's going on, and we got to be very careful in society about that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's kind of what happened with the New York the mayor race, right? So I think people are fed up out there, and that's why the candidate or the one
Yeah.
who won, Mandami, he spoke to the people on what they want to hear, and they want to change. And I think, like you're saying, it's a revolt, right? People are fed up out there, and even you're talking about fear and job loss. I think Lumberjack was mentioning it also on his live on Thursday. But even as I read through like Zuber's comments, you definitely notice there's a different vibe from different people out there, right? So in our, maybe where we're sitting, the people that hold assets, you're like, I don't really notice too much, right? But there is people struggling and do have fear out there, and that kind of brings us to what most people watching price charts probably missed this past week. So what signal did smart money send this week that most people completely overlooked?
Well, most people are seeing, price drops. We're seeing volatility in the market. We're seeing institutions either buying or selling. We're seeing that capital is not fleeing risk and things of that nature. But we know with Bitcoin, there's scarcity, right? There's resilience. And we're seeing it kind of steady out right now back at 90 grand when you price it in fiat. But I want to kind of even piggyback to what you were saying. A lot of times, I teach history. I got a master's degree. I can teach anything in social science, economics, world history, U.S. history, geography, anything. And I'm not saying that to brag or nothing. I'm just saying that's what my degrees are in. But a lot of times we think the president is just completely controlling the economy. They get way too much credit and they get way too much blame for things that are going on. Really, things like the Fed rate, the money printer, those are things, that's why Jerome Powell, he's really one of the most important people in the entire world. There's cause and effect to everything they're doing, right? When they lower the rates, borrowing gets going again, people start investing, they hire more employees, and they're extending their business. When the rates get up to where they are, they put a screeching halt onto the economy. And I think that presidents too often get blamed for things of the economy. Well, Trump's fault, the egg prices are here, or Biden's fault, this, it's like, look, man, there's a thing called the Fed, and they're deciding a lot of these things beyond Congress. Now, don't get me wrong, Congress could print money. They could, we obviously gave out checks and stimulus, and it seems like we're going to go that direction again. We're supposed to have the highest tax refunds back to people after this tax season. We're supposed to, I don't know. So we'll see what happens eventually. But there's a lot of things changing, and it seems like we might go back into that same cycle of inflation to fear to inflation to fear. But eventually, that can that we keep kicking down the road, that bill is going to be coming due to somebody.
If someone did nothing this week except observe one thing, what should it have been? Maybe
the one thing I would go back to is that the banks are allowing you to borrow against your Bitcoin. They're going to even be able to store your Bitcoin for you. A lot of times you buy Bitcoin and you're like, I don't want to forget my seed phrase, my password. I don't want to deal with cold wallets or hot wallets or anything like that. Banks are going to take all that out of that. So you're not going to have to worry about that. If you're, some Bitcoin maxis are paranoid and they won't want to do that. But a lot of times, a lot of people just don't want to lose their Bitcoin. I mean, if you have $100,000 Bitcoin, you don't want to you forget your password. I couldn't even get on live on this thing for like 6 weeks. So it's like, but I know my Bitcoin password. So, those things are all there. They're trying to take that out of there. So you're not afraid. We also have Wall Street that is trying to decide, like, they're late to the party. Wall Street didn't buy Bitcoin. And now they're trying to figure out what do they do to get in this because they see the global adoption. And who would have thought, just before Trump, when Gary Gensler and regulation were trying to get rid of crypto and make it, dismiss it. And now we have someone like the president, the most powerful person in the world, pumping it and helping regulation and having a committee to do so. Well, everyone's kind of a little like, oh man, this is real. This is happening. So, yeah.
All right. Well, that's kind of our general framework for the week. So now let's open it up. If anyone has any comments or things they want Nick to discuss. But like he said, we had the most difficult time figuring out how to link
Yeah.
his channel. Everyone else easy. For some reason, Nick couldn't do it. He finally did it. So like he said, he is linked today live streaming on his channel. So there is his channel in the chat also. So if you can go hit that subscribe button and like over there also, so we can get Nick. What are you at now? 270, 280 maybe?
288, trying to keep going. I want to get to 1,000. That's my first goal. When I spoke with you, Mark, initially about like individual goals when we first started, it was like, let's get to 1,000, you know? So that's my goal. I have daily videos of what's going on with Bitcoin, but not just Bitcoin. I did real estate. I feel like an expert in single family homes and ADUs. That's about it for my real estate. I mean, I even could do property management. I did it all myself. And I obviously sold it all about Bitcoin. I would buy real estate again. I love real estate as well. But that's what my channel is about. It's about daily financial, about leadership. I was a 20-year basketball coach, athletic director, and I'm all about just growing my community and people. I actually care about people, man. You know, when a lot of people don't, they want to use you. It's all transactional, what they can get out of
Did
you.
you notice while you were on your trip that you're getting subscribers? Or
Um, I didn't have any internet on the trip.
oh,
Remember,
that's
I
right.
was like, I checked out. So I was like, when I left I don't know. I don't know if I got a lot of subscribers before I left or not, you know, truthfully.
Well, while we're waiting to see if anyone has any final questions or comments, I do want to dig in. This is kind of not on Bitcoin, like you said, real estate, but I did have a live stream with Emily Lopez, who's kind of my regular on Friday now, but she has a big DIY channel. She's in Wyoming. But I put a short or reel out with her. She was talking about buying properties in cash and mentioning how, you're kind of one bad tenant away, your money's all tied up. She did mention, California, New York as places that have very strict landlord tenant policies and things like that. And you commented on that video. It says missing a huge part about New York and California investing. The
Yeah.
appreciation is so much more. Red states cash flow more, but appreciate less, and blue states appreciate more and cash flow less. So you want to maybe touch on that a little bit while we wait?
Yeah, yeah. You're giving up maybe some landlord rights, but for more appreciation in the blue states. Dion mentions it pretty perfectly. I think he want to do California, but he says I want a red county in a blue state because that's basically where he's at in Washington. He's in a red county in a blue state. But there's so much more appreciation. I mean, one of my rentals I had for like a year and a half, 2 years, I made 100 grand in appreciation just in that time when I sold it. And sure, you make a couple $100 in monthly cash flow, but I just love the appreciation aspect of that. And I think it's also a misnomer on how long um, evictions take too. They're all like, California, you'll be stuck for 10 years before you can get out. That's not really true. I looked up all the eviction laws for all the states. California has a little longer, but you can get them out in 3 months. You get them out in 6 months, no doubt. So that's not really true. And if you look at someone like Zuber, who has only California real estate, he's doing pretty well with what he was doing, and he wasn't worried about the eviction laws because he just evicts people. That's such a big misnomer on evictions in California. A
All
lot of
right. So to that point though, right? So you talk about appreciation, and do you think I was trying to look for it. I didn't have time to find it, but does the appreciation, is it that much greater in, let's say, California and New York, or does it seem greater because the median price is higher, right? So it seems like the appreciation is greater, but the percentage wise, based on the price of the home, isn't that significant.
so that could depend right there, I guess, in some ways. If you're in a place with less growth, less jobs, the incomes and wages aren't going up as much, then those houses have stayed. That's why they're still like in Gary, Indiana, where the millennial Mike does. I mean, how much is a property there? Like 100 grand? You know, it's
Oh
very
yeah,
low.
yeah,
Yeah. So
100, yeah, half a
going up,
Bitcoin.
maybe
No,
goes up 3%, maybe, but at the same time, a lot of those places that even went up only went up because people during COVID decided to work remote and they went to those places and they actually bid those houses up to the most they've been. So I don't know. This is what I think. I think that HVAC costs a certain amount no matter what state you're in. I think a roof costs a certain amount no matter what state you're in. I think, windows or these things, these capex expenses costs a certain amount, and I might as well get a lot of appreciation, in my opinion. Now sometimes, like LA County with Graham Stephan, it gets stupid. Now I got to pay you 38 grand to move out. Now that's a whole nother level. Now that's a blue county in a blue state. And those are the horror stories that you need to run from, where they had a moratorium for 2 more years after COVID. So that's where I think the California gets the bad rap.
Before we get into Trade Better 99's questions, I do want to add, I forgot what podcast I was watching, but they had a great kind of explanation of California.
Mhm.
They said it's that hot blonde chick from high school that didn't have to do any work and always was getting asked out on dates, right? So California has all these attractive things. People want to live there, the weather, things to do, the economy. Then at some point, it's like it becomes a 40-year-old lady, with the wrinkles and not much to offer, and it's just like the time has come to move on in a sense, right? So yeah, I thought that was interesting how like California, it attracted a lot of people. You didn't have to do anything, right? How Gavin Newsom always talks about,
Oh, yeah.
right? And it's like, yeah, people just want to move there, but at some point, what are you offering them, right? So I found that interesting. But Trade Better 99 does say, Nick, what countries do you think will have the hardest adoption time of Bitcoin?
What countries do I think will have the hardest adoption? I guess the I can't say specifically. We're seeing some things in Europe and places like even China where they're not allowing you to buy Bitcoin, where they're banning it from their countries. Even in America, they try to do heavy regulation through Gary Gensler, and that means less adoption from America. So Bitcoin price is not going to go up as much because you're not getting a huge country like America or China. And then they start opening it up because they need to understand you can't stop this train. It's going to keep, people are going to keep buying. They're going to keep adopting. It's going to keep happening. So I think anything you did buy in those countries, you just go to another one and spend it. I think those are the countries that are actually going to be better than a place like America because they're inflating money at a rate that you can't sustain. Like they're going up 70%. Your dollar's worthless, and those are the ones you want to get to. But I think places like China and other ones, what I've come to see, Germany sold like, let's just say 50,000 coins. And when it was at like 45,000 a coin, we'll just say for round numbers. And now it was worth 120. You know how many schools they could have built? How many hospitals they could have built? And now they're thinking about buying it again. It's like, whoa, you just sold it. And now you're thinking about buying it. But isn't that what people do psychologically? When it's not going good, or like, I don't want nothing to do with that. Right now, even people are like, I don't want to buy Bitcoin. It's down. People, you were praying like, I don't want to buy it when it's high. So the psychology of investing is very challenging, even with real estate. Real estate is unaffordable, people will say. Bro, it's 3.5% down if you're going to house hack it. You don't have 15 grand. If you don't have 15 grand, then you need to do a side hustle. Then you need to limit your spending. And I think you might have offended every beautiful blonde in California, by the way, by saying when they're 40, they're old.
Well, okay, I should have said
They're not old
50
when
there.
they're 40. They're still beautiful, brother.
I do want to skip over real quick. So Marlon RE I'm going to push back a little bit on this. It says, I love my Cali rentals. One property in Cali is the equivalent of 5 in the Midwest. It's just the facts. That is true. But like, why do many people want to try to get to small multis or multiple units? Because they're afraid of vacancies, right? So if you have only one property in California, that equals 5 properties in the Midwest. Now let's say that tenant moves out or you're vacant. So now all your cash is tied into this one property. Chances are you're going to be negative. Many properties don't cash flow right off the bat. So if you factor in, so let's say you have $1 million property compared to 5 $200,000 properties. So that's what I was saying about the percentages, right? So let's say that $1 million property appreciates 10% 1 year. So it's $100,000 it looks like, right? Let's say the Midwest property appreciates 5% or whatnot, right? So per that one property, the appreciation looks smaller from the total amount. But now when you combine it up to $1 million, right, it'll be 50. So yeah, you're going to be slightly behind in appreciation, but chances are you're cash flowing right on these properties compared to being negative in a California property. And now you have more units if you do have vacancies, right? Because that's why everyone is always trying to get duplex, triplex, or get smaller multis because they're worried about the vacancies, right? So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that part of it.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good thing to bring up though, because he says one property in California. But is that one property a 16 unit? You know, even when you talk to Michael Zuber, he's like one rental at a time, get to four. But he's not talking about four doors, necessarily. He's talking about four properties, and the properties could have, if you got a quadplex, that still counts as one of the four. It doesn't count as four. So it could be interesting. Does he mean one just single family house? Does he mean one 32 unit place? And even then, you have different regulations. In maybe California and some other places, you have to have a live-in landlord if it's past 8 units or different things. So it could be a little complicated in that. And I understand what he's saying about appreciation. One, appreciation is not guaranteed. That's one thing you can't say. Now, it could be more likely because there's just more money in a place like California as well. You buy a great deal, and there's more possibilities there. People are willing to pay, and there's not as much money in some of those other places when they get hit by hard times or whatever. But you also have a Gavin Newsom that is ruining a good thing too, I think, not to be political, but there's a lot of rich people moving out of California. It's going to have an effect on the state very soon here. You see companies leaving. Those are the ones that are paying the most taxes. I know they like to say they're not paying taxes, but they're actually paying more. 40% of the country doesn't even pay taxes, the bottom 40%. So there's a lot of misnomers here that people need to educate themselves on. And I don't care what political parties I voted, whatever, each way. I don't get into that. But the point is, I wouldn't just say nothing. I mean, nothing's guaranteed. You cannot appreciate. Cash flow is usually the thing that is guaranteed. And so that's why it's a safer bet. And then some states actually do have great landlord laws. In Wyoming, you're kicking people out in days, like adios, you didn't pay it. I have friends that invest in places in like Cody, Wyoming, and others, and Texas even, or Florida. They have some better landlord laws. So yeah, sometimes the landlord laws are a killer, and they are great, and that's why it's a little safer. But there is risk to everything. And I like what you're saying as well. You're trying to mitigate risk at all times. So if you have a quadplex and one of them, is available, well, you're not getting no money. You're still getting three people paying. And that kind of balances out till you fill that fourth door. So I totally understand that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, then Marlon RE follows up with Cali has a bigger rental pool and more cash to afford the rent. 40 million people. How many in your Midwest state? He's saying several single family rentals, and we're focusing on LA County. The rest is fine. That is true, but what is the entry point? So if someone wanted to start today, would they be able to buy a cash flowing rental property in California that would make sense for them? And how long would it take them to get in the door, right? So that's so many factors. I mean, every market works for someone, and California does have its benefits, and a lot of people are making money there. But to me, it's a lot of people. It's hard to get started there, right? And that's going to be the most challenging thing, right? So are you going to sit on the sidelines waiting up to build up your down payment? And as you're mentioning, appreciation. So how long will you be waiting there, right? But Trade Better 99 follows up with Nick. Would you sell any of your rentals in Bitcoin?
Would I sell my rentals and they would pay me in Bitcoin? Is that what he's saying? I just want to make sure I understand the question.
Yeah, it's
Oh, it doesn't matter whether they pay me in money or Bitcoin. Yeah, I don't mind. I would sell whatever. I don't care what it is. I'll take my Bitcoin, and I have trading Bitcoin stacks because I get bored a little bit. One thing I realized about myself is like just buy and hold and waiting has me a little bored. I guess maybe because I don't coach basketball. I coached for 20 years, and I don't coach basketball anymore. So I like to just do something. So I have a trading stack. I have a holding stack, and then I'm constantly learning how to do new things. That's why, like, I did single family rentals. Then I learned how to property manage, and then I was like, let's do an ADU. You know what I mean? So and then I created an ADU, and then I bought a house that already had an ADU on it because I was like, all right, let's see the differences and what are the changes. And you just keep learning. I think you should always keep growing. They say get rich in your niche. I totally understand that, but there's nothing wrong with like growing and learning new things and mastering them. I don't know everything about all the storage units and mobile home parks, and I just try to master a few things about it. I'll pivot as needed. I pivoted and sold real estate and bought Bitcoin. I'd sell my stocks or anything else and buy real estate if now's the time. As rates are lowering, I think there's a good opportunity for real estate. Right now, people are hurting or scared or nervous. I think there's blood in the streets coming right now, and it might be a good opportunity to buy real estate. And I don't mind. I sold some of my trading stack, and I'm willing to buy. I was already looking in Charlotte. I told Marc about it. I did a whole property walkthrough via FaceTime on Monday in Charlotte. Just because I think it's beautiful and I want to retire there one day. But yeah.
Yep, Charlotte's amazing. I'll probably look in that area or like I said, North Carolina, South Carolina. But Trade Better 99 also adds, will California depreciate with Hollywood falling apart?
Well, I don't know if it's with Hollywood falling apart. I think it's with some of the policies and regulations of the governor themselves, and it has nothing to do with a blue governor, or in my opinion, I don't think that way. But I do think if a governor is not supporting, like they're trying to get votes from people, but these other people are supporting the entire state. I know it's a beautiful state. I think it's the most beautiful state there is. But some of the policies are some of the ugliest ones because they're not protecting what's making it great. And you don't want to lose, like even the great city of San Francisco. I've been there. I think it's incredible. But you go there and they're breaking into cars, literally like breaking windows and stealing people's stuff. I couldn't believe it. You know, I saw it 5 times in the weekend I was there. I walked the bridge, San Francisco bridge, you know, and I came back and the car next to me, all their luggage from the airport because they went straight to the bridge was stolen. So I think policy can mess things up. When you're breaking into the CVS and they're running and leaving, there needs to be consequences for that. You know, spare the rod, spoil the child. So I think there needs to be consequences and repercussions. I don't think you need the death penalty, but you need to make it so where no one's going to do those things ever again. And you shouldn't be stealing, and you shouldn't be doing those. You shouldn't be destroying people's property for landlords. I think that's completely wrong. You shouldn't have to make them in LA County. I have to pay you 38 grand for you to move. 3 months salary or whatever it is for some people. Like, bro, you don't even make 38 grand. I gotta give you that. Like, that's ridiculous. So those are policies that scare people. And I know a lot of wealthy people that have moved out of this state because they are afraid of those regulations. I mean, Elon Musk just moved Tesla, a big portion, to Texas, and I don't think Texas is amazing either because they have property taxes that will rip you off. Don't get me wrong. You know, there's always a problem in every state, but you don't want the richest people leaving, man. I'll tell you that. That's a big problem.
Yeah. Trade Better wants, I guess, clarified. He's saying yes, the sale of the property in Bitcoin. So I guess to sell it to get paid in Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, I'm totally fine. You could sell me that right now in Bitcoin. I know what Bitcoin's valued at. No matter what, it's still valued in fiat at that price. So if you wanted to get rid of it, you could sell it. You might not want to because you might pay different property taxes. Because when you own a home, you know, 2 of the last 5 years, that's your primary rental or primary property. You don't have to pay taxes up to 250 or 500,000 if you're married. You know, I did taxes for 7 years. So it all depends on the tax strategies you want to do. So it depends, you know, instead of maybe doing a 1031 exchange, maybe there's something else you could do with Bitcoin and other things. So it's all going to be creative finance pretty soon here. And I think people are going to want to get paid in Bitcoin because they're going to store it. Look at Grant Cardone right now. He has real estate and Bitcoin. There's nothing wrong with having both. People are like, that was a real estate guy who's pivoted to some Bitcoin. I'm a real estate guy who's pivoted to full Bitcoin, but I don't mind pivoting back. I like money. I don't worship it or anything like that. But I think there's nothing wrong with like having, you see an opportunity, you see the right wave, you know, you're in Hawaii, you see the wave you want to actually take out for surfing. You don't just keep paddling, you jump on it and you surf and you go back out and you get another wave.
Hyder is saying USA because the dollar is so useful. The use case is less visual, in my opinion. And then Janelle is saying, as a high school teacher, do you ever talk to your students about investing? I know it's not part of the curriculum, but do you ever share little nuggets of advice or try to plant that investing seed?
Oh, 100%. I do. I think, school, I teach world history currently. I teach economics and a couple things, but even in my world history class, we're talking about stagflation. We're talking about gold and how it's heavy and you can't transfer it. And this is why Bitcoin's amazing. I have my other buddy that I work with. He gave $5 to every student in Bitcoin just to kind of teach them how easy it is. And he let them keep it. Who cares? But we're constantly talking about these things with our students, not trying. I pulled out one of my Robinhood brokerage. I said, "Here's over 1 million. Take a look at it." They're like, "You're a millionaire? What are you doing teaching?" I was like, "Well, I love you guys, and I want you guys to be millionaires." The difference between me and a lot of other teachers is I actually went to that high school that I teach at. So I lived in that city. I walked through those halls. I've shopped at that mall, and I want them all to be successful. So, sometimes depending on your age, you can't open a Robinhood account or something. But I talk to them about what an ETF is and what Bitcoin is, and about Tesla. They're making robots, man, and their cars, their robo taxis. Those are just robots. they're called cars. You know what I mean? But, yeah.
So I mean, I know you can't like give them advice, most likely, but when you speak to them, I'm sure you mentioned Bitcoin. I'm sure you mentioned real estate. What do they seem more interested in when you talk about it?
Well, man, they seem more. They're when you're kids, you believe you're going to be rich, right? Like every single one of them, they're like, I'm going to go to UCLA. I'm going to go to, like, bro, you're not going to UCLA. I see your grades. You got 3 Fs right now. I'm going to be a multimillionaire. I'm like, son, how are you going to be a multimillionaire? Let's talk about that. And it opens up these doors, where I get to talk to them about being committed. We do a thing over here in January. I do a GPA assignment, because school GPA, but it's goals, plans, actions. What are your goals for 5 years from now in your relationship, in your finances, in your physical health, and so on? And then what's your plan to accomplish those goals? Because they'll tell you they want to be a millionaire and then have no plan. They'll just be like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, you need to know. That's the only way to become a millionaire. You got to be intentional about it. And then actions are just your very next steps. What are you going to do immediately next? Well, I'm going to watch your video, Mr. Massey and Coach Massey, and I'm going to learn more I'm going to educate myself, or whatever it is. But we actually talk about these things all the time. My school, I think, is amazing, because we have a financial literacy class where we talk about Dave Ramsey and we talk about Kiyosaki, and we do projects and how they're different and how they're the same. We also have things like a nursing program where we have like a full medical office room, like literally everything you would have in a medical, like a doctor's office, plus things. We have aerospace thing where they learn how to fly. We have a guy who was in the military, the Air Force, who teaches them what flying's like. We have so many programs, and this is just a public school in California, and we have just so many amazing things that people kind of poop on because they don't really understand that these things are actually happening.
Well, I think that's the last questions I see here. I think this was a good weekly wrap up. I don't think I mentioned it. I remember so your message must be getting out there, right? Because you were, cutting your hair, you said the other week, and someone recognized you. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I was getting my hair cut in the barber shop, and the barber next to me, I've been going there for quite a while. You know what I mean? I don't even know how long. I don't know, at least 2 years. And the barber next to me is looking at me, and I've seen him a million times. He's got the chair right next to me. He's looking at me. He's looking at me, and he goes, "You're a YouTuber, right?" And I was like, "Oh my god!" It was like kind of like the coolest thing that's happened to me. You know what I mean? And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a YouTuber. I guess I never really thought of myself as a YouTuber. I'm a coach. I got a master's degree. I do real estate. But I was a YouTuber. It was pretty cool." He was so amazed though. He was like asking me questions. He's like, "Do you know? I need to ask about Meet Kevin. I don't know Meet Kevin, bro. Just because I'm on YouTube doesn't mean I know Meet Kevin." But he was talking to me about it. He's like, "I like financial stuff, and you're on my feed," and it was just pretty cool. The Graham Stephan. I'm like, I don't know Graham Stephan. I'm on YouTube, but we're not friends.
Very
Um,
cool. Yeah.
I thought it was one of the coolest things ever to
Well,
happen.
I mean, I'm sure, like I said, it must have felt great, like knowing that your message or your content's getting out there. So, like I said, there is Nick's channel in the chat. So if you have time, go jump over there, hit the like, subscribe if you haven't yet. And I guess we have one final question. Trey Better 99 is asking, what historical figure do you relate to the most?
Oh man, if I was gonna go historical figure, I'm gonna go actually with the Bible. I'm lead, pray, hodl, so I'm gonna go with Joseph. No matter, a lot of bad things can happen to me, but I'm still gonna persevere. I'm still gonna have faith, and I do believe things end up the way they're supposed to end up, and you could help so many people in the long run. So that's one thing I really like. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Marc's channel. A lot of times people, he's pushing out great content and pushing everyone else's channel, but make sure you subscribe to his channel. He's taken the time to do this weekly with me. He's got great energy, great questions, and he just seems to be such a great person from all the time that I've known him the last couple of months. So please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to his channel.
Yeah, people, because Brandon passed me now. So Brandon was below me, and I'm promoting him all the time. And now he leapfrogged me. So now you guys can help me out and get past Brandon again. But we're all trying to do this together. So everyone is helping everyone out, and I think everyone has their own little message. So like Cody Davis on Monday, got Brandon Potts on Tuesday. I got Joel and Lauren. So yeah, it's fun. See, Marlon says, yeah, I love the fact that there are several history buffs on this channel. Yeah, that's what I like to try to do. Bring different people on here. The people in the comment section are great. Hyder, Harrison are always super supportive. So I love that. Hopefully, when Hyder starts his new journey into his nonprofit, I believe, we can get him on and talk about that a little bit more.
Nice.
But Hyder is working on something cool also in San Diego. And hey, Invest to Well, tuning in. Sorry, man, we're wrapping things up, but we'll be back next week. Next week, Saturday, same time should be. But we're trying to do this on a weekly thing, a weekly wrap up. It'll be kind of short, same thing, maybe 20 minutes or so, and then the rest is for questions and whatever's going on in the chat. But Nick, what you got planned for the rest of the week then?
Oh, the rest of the week I'm going to just continue to do my research. I spend a lot of time researching, and I'm also spending my time. I got my Big Nick Energy Christmas sweatshirt. You know what I'm saying?
All right, glad you had the right one you're wearing, not the parental advisory one.
No. I
All
can't
right.
stand up all the way though. I'm in my underwear, but other than that,
Yeah.
no, I'm just
Okay.
kidding.
Let's
I'm
not
just
do
kidding.
that.
Yeah.
All
What
right,
about you?
everybody.
What about you, Marc? What do you got going?
I am gonna jump on the new school call going on right after in about 20 minutes. There's a new short-term rental accountability call that's gonna start. Ray and Christopher Price are gonna kick that off. I think a lot of people are looking for ways to cash flow, right? A lot of markets are getting tight out there, so they're looking for different things. We got REI Jared who does the rent by room, and people I think have maybe soured on short-term rentals, but Ray and Chris are here to be like, no, if you guys do it right, it's still lucrative, right? So they're trying to help people realize that if you make it kind of a unique stay or put the work in, these things are still cash flowing very, very well.
Yeah, one thing I want to say to that though is like when you buy your property, have options. Like if you have multiple options, like this will work as a long-term buy and hold. Great, then you're good. But it could also work as a rent by the room. It could also work as a short-term rental. It could also work. So when you have like those options, I think that's really like some people even rent their garages out, so you don't even have to like you like one of the rentals. I didn't. Sorry to go off topic, but they didn't get garage access because you could rent out the garage to someone that wants to put their old car in there or anything else. So you don't have to give them garage access because they rent your house, and they'll still rent it. Trust me. So there's a lot of creative ways. No one ever talks about that. And you can rent your pool. There's literally like people will come in and borrow your pool for a little party or get together because they don't have one at their house. There's a lot of creative ways. So don't get stuck in like one system, one way. Keep learning, keep networking, seeing what other people do, and you'll grow. Watch our channels.
All right, yeah, I'll just wrap it up with the one person I always like to give a shout out on, like you're saying, think outside the box is Curtis, RE turn or PE turn RE is because like I said, his the way he got on the property ladder, right? He bought a property, he basically boarded up a room and he lived in there, no shower. He would shower at the gym, the mom's house, but he did that first house hack, and now I think he's up to 6 units now. He's on his second house hack, but
Oh.
he did what he had to do, right? So amazing. I give Curtis a hard time, but I love the guy. He put the effort, put the work in. So everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we will see everyone next week Saturday, and hopefully I'll see you in the new school call. But thanks.